Thank you, V. And thank you to all of you for everything that you do and everything that you bring to this congregation and everything that you give so generously, including this, your hard-earned resources. Please know that we will do everything we can to use this faithfully and generously. You know, I say all the time that in Unitarian Universalism, we don't have one sacred text. For us, the whole world is our sacred text, including cookbooks. And so this morning, this sermon is called Bean Soup Therapy. I mean, Bean Soup Theory. Where did that come from? There's got to be something Freudian in there. How can I not make bean soup here in the sanctuary? So, I know everybody's been wondering what this is right here. Okay. Before I get started, Linda White Burrell, can I put you on the spot?
Too late.
When I give you the cue, I'm going to ask you to take the pot of soup and put it on the stove, okay? Yeah, that stove in there. But it's a while from now. It's like during the sermon, okay? Cool. Okay. Okay. So, we don't have the benefit of stage kitchen here. I know, right? Julia Child actually invented that whole thing with the stage kitchen, with the mirror up above that could see the stuff from behind so that the camera could look at the mirror and everybody could see what was going on. We're not that fancy. We barely have a kitchen that functions here. So we're going to pretend that this is a big glass pot and that this is a stove, okay? And then all of the ingredients that I'm putting in here are raw and we're cooking them. So this is a really simple bean soup recipe that evolved over time. Some people accredit it to Fannie Farmer, some people accredit it to Marion and Cunningham. You'll hear more about the two of them later. But the recipe starts the way so many good recipes do, taking 12 onions and dicing them and putting them into a warm pot, not too high a heat, and cooking them down until they're translucent. Okay, so there's the onions, all cooked. And then this recipe adds ham. Lots of chopped ham, almost as much ham as onions. So we put those in. This is a lot of ham. And of course we're going to stir that over our heat. Get this all like well incorporated. We're going to cook this for like, a good half hour. Let the fat render out of the ham and get into this so you're not chewing on gnarly bits. Mix it up really well, right? And then we're going to add the important part, the beans. Yeah, that beans over there. This is a lot of beans. This started off as 2 dry pounds of beans, and the point is to cook it until it's soft. Now if this were really a stove and this were all really raw, this would be cooked now, this would be raw. I'm putting this in raw, and this would cook for like 4 hours until the beans are really soft. See, I wasn't kidding, this is a lot of beans. So look at, can everybody see this? Okay, good. Oh, sorry, choir. Poor choir, you're always behind everything. So right, this is a lot. So hey, Linda, when you put this on the stove, back into this pot, and on the stove, I'm gonna ask you to put just a little more water so that everything's like covered, right? So, it's 4 hours later and this is cooked and the beans are soft. So now, We're gonna add, this looks like a lot, salt and pepper. And a whole jar of Dijon mustard. See, here's the thing though. In a world before the 1950s, Americans didn't really use spices and stuff, right? There was a time when putting a quarter of a clove of garlic into a giant pot like this would have been a lot. So that jar of mustard with a bit of horseradish and wine, that's where a lot of the flavor's coming from. Looks like a lot. So, okay. Oh, this really is a lot. So while this is simmering on our imaginary stove, let's all rise now as we're rolling an apple and sing together hymn number 318, We Would Be One. Catherine Beecher came from the most famous Unitarian family in America. Her sister was Harriet Beecher Stowe, author of Uncle Tom's Cabin, and her brother was Henry Ward Beecher, the most famous preacher in the country, whose affair with his best friend's wife became the most scandalous affair of his age. I talked about him in a sermon a few months back. Now, Catherine was an innovator in the practical and academic education of women. Among many other things, as a matter of economic justice for the poor, she created kitchen standards regarding everything from liquid and dry measurements to countertop heights, long before anyone termed the phrase ergonomics. And that launched a global movement that would be called domestic science. And Fanny Farmer, a real person unlike Betty Crocker, set to work making standard recipes for use with those standard measurements. Again, this was justice related. It was about giving even the poorest people access to skills that would become marketable. So Fanny Farmer, who, by the way, was another Unitarian, made herself very famous very quickly running the Boston Cooking School, and published a cookbook that bore the school's name. She put out new editions each year or two, which included traditional favorites, like bean soup, and more exotic fare, those things that had the quarter of a clove of garlic. In 1957, long after Fanny Farmer had died, Marion Cunningham took over what by then was being called the Fanny Farmer Cookbook. The tastes are always changing, so each new edition brought with it changes to the recipes. 20-year-old cookbooks seemed hopelessly out of touch, and she knew that, so they were constantly evolving. And weirdly, even though she never claimed the identity, Marion Cunningham became very confused with the real-life Fanny Farmer. So much so that the recipes get confused. Did it come from the Boston Cooking School cookbook by Fanny Farmer or by the Fanny Farmer cookbook by Marion Cunningham? So the books and the recipes evolved, keeping pace with our culinary and cultural evolution. Our understanding of the world expands, right? Our self-knowledge expands. Our curiosity, if we're lucky, keeps us always learning, always seeking new experiences, new flavors. Sometimes, for a whole bunch of reasons related to health or ethics or something else, many of us also decide to eliminate foods from our diet, forever or for a short period. A lot of times, we just don't like things. Now, I love food, all food, but I hate eggplant. I know, right? Everybody acts like that. Like when I say I don't like Star Trek, oh, yeah. I don't like eggplant. Most of the time. We can be fickle. We can be demanding.
And so we who love experimenting with food, when we see recipes like Fannie Farmer's or Marion Cunningham's, we like to adapt them. And we're always adapting recipes for our own preferences, the things that we do or don't eat. A couple years ago, Megan Schaltegger from Delish, an online food magazine that's owned by Hearst, watched a flame war erupt in the comments section of a recipe for bean soup. And it was not a complicated recipe. It was not much more than what we just made here on our imaginary stove. And she was shocked when half of the commentators said things like, "I don't like beans," or "I can't eat beans," and then went on to ask if they could use something other than beans in the bean soup. Well, of course you're allowed to make whatever soup you want, right? And if you want to make something that's based on a bean soup recipe but use something other than beans, have at it. Nobody is stopping you from changing every single ingredient in a recipe that you want to try at home. It's a free country. Last I checked, it's a free country. But here's the thing. If you take the beans out of your bean soup, it's not bean soup anymore, right? And if you serve someone bean soup without beans, no matter how delicious it is, it's not bean soup. They're likely to think that you're lying or that you've lost your marbles. But people were so invested in the debate about whether or not you can put something other than beans in the bean soup, like instead of beans. And for Schaltegger, the debates were existential. She called it the bean soup theory, which she described as people asking, "What about me?" because they felt left out by a recipe that was built around something they don't like or don't eat. If I don't like something, I should be able to change it to meet my needs. If you tell me I can't change it, then you're denying my presence, my importance, my autonomy, my personhood. So listen, I get it. If you go from somewhere for a meal and you can't eat anything that's being served, it stinks. A couple months ago, I made a huge shift in my life. Every single day I wake up and I promise myself that I will not eat flour, sugar, or dairy. I know, right? It's a lot. It is a lot. For years I've been saying, I do my best to avoid them. It hasn't really worked. I needed to draw a clear line on that, right? And so when I'm tempted by those things, I tell myself, that's not my food. That's other people's food. Good for them. That's great, but it's not my food. And it has made all the difference in the world. I feel better than I have ever felt in my life. But it can be weird. Recently, I went to a fundraiser dinner where they served cheese and crackers, then salad with croutons and grated cheese, then baked ziti with cheese and garlic bread and green beans cooked in butter, and finally cake. I sat at that $100 a plate meal and drank water. It was not the high point of my life. And it was also not about me. It was about raising money for a good cause that I believe in. I did my best to not make my table mates feel weird about me not eating while they enjoyed the meal. What else could I do? So I understand the urge to adapt a recipe to meet your needs. I do it all the time. But when you change enough things, or just the right thing, you end up with something completely different, right? So let's say you use beets instead of the ham, or even in addition to the ham soup, right? Let's just... Beets, 3, roasted for a nice long time. Thank you. Folks, folks at home should be able to see this. Right? This. Oh my God, this is a lot to stir. What am I doing on that side? See that? This is no longer bean soup. So in a couple minutes, when Linda takes us and puts it on the stove to heat it up in the big pot that's in there, this is just going to get redder and redder. These white beans aren't going to be white anymore. They're going to be pink. This whole thing, this is now bean soup. Like, it's taken over so much that this is bean soup. And the thing is, I think that's what we risk when we show up someplace. Whether they're serving food or not, and ask, what about me? When it isn't meeting our needs and we demand change, while it might be an act of justice, we also risk turning it into something else. I've personal experience with this. A gay bar, a safe space for gay men, getting taken over by straight women who like to dance there because the men aren't threatening, overrun the place, and then it's no longer a gay bar. Or imagine something like a men's breakfast that becomes something completely different because their wives joined up. Can you imagine someone showing up here and saying that the absence of Jesus in our services makes them feel excluded, and then trying to remake UUCSC in the image of, I don't know, an Episcopal church? Or, maybe the same thing happens with someone who wants us to be a Reformed synagogue or a Shinto shrine. It would no longer be a Unitarian Universalist congregation. And yet, we want visitors and newcomers to feel welcome, right? All visitors. Okay, well, mostly all visitors. I mean, if someone came in screaming about how queer people and women who have abortions are going to hell, we show them the door pretty quickly. We try to be polite, but we show them the door. But we want people to feel welcome. We do what we can to provide for a variety of needs and preferences, even around food. We do what we can to make the facilities accessible. We do what we can to give voice to a wide spectrum of beliefs. But there's only so much that we can do to adapt before we turn into something we're not. The people who are welcome, the people who find us to be like-minded, are those who find solidarity in our values, the things that matter. Those who want to be in solidarity with the underdogs of the world, the people who don't hold all the money, all the power, all the privilege. The people who are welcome are those who believe in justice, pluralism, independence, generosity, love, equity, and transformation, but especially love. Here, where we always put love at the center. And love is at the center of solidarity, and that's what matters. Because this project that we're engaged in, this project we call Unitarian Universalism, is all about solidarity. Solidarity, recognizing our differences and finding our strength in them. Solidarity, locking arms to form a barrier against a predator. Solidarity, building a strong foundation that can't be undermined by the shifting sands of time. Solidarity, making and maintaining a safety net that protects the most vulnerable among us. Solidarity at its core is about taking a punch that's intended for another person. Solidarity is not about being together in peace. Solidarity is not about creating harmony at the expense of making positive change. Solidarity is not about ignoring hurt feelings or the differences in our needs. Solidarity is saying that for us to have any strength together, we will not be all things to all people all the time. It's knowing who and what we are and sticking to it. The way bean soup has to include beans. This Friday, May 1st, there's going to be a general strike across across the country. It's inspired by and responding to everything that happened in Minneapolis a couple months ago as the city was under siege by ICE, when 2 process witnesses were murdered by federal agents. The intention of the strike is for people, hopefully 3.5% of the population, to rise up over billionaires to engage in a day without shopping, without work, without school. Now, it's not the way I immediately think of getting things done. I mean, aside from gas and groceries, I buy almost nothing in my life that's new. I don't have kids or grandkids in school, and if I don't show up for work, if I ignore my work, the only people it hurts are the members of this congregation that I serve. It hurts you, the people that I'm in solidarity with. It doesn't affect any billionaires. But I'm going to stay home on Friday, as I do every Friday. And I'll work from home to be in solidarity with the people whose values I share, the people who are doing their best to protect democracy and justice and demand a government that serves working families rather than prioritizing billionaires or conducting endless wars. It makes me realize that while I would take a punch intended for someone else, it doesn't always have to be that dramatic. Being in solidarity can be as simple as staying home and not spending money. Being in solidarity can be as simple as not always asking, what about me, when others are benefiting? Especially when I care about those who are getting something when I am not. Because I know that if we really are in this together, if we really will take a punch intended for the other, you'll make sure that next time there's something I can eat, even if it's bean soup. So except for the choir, let's all remain as we are and open our hymnals to 188.